Well, before we get started, wasn't that just fantastic? Yes. Yes. Before we get started, I want to share a little something with you. We decided to have a little fun in the office this week, and we thought that it would be a good idea to share that fun with you. And so take a look at the screen. Sorry, Sherry. Sorry, guys.
Thank you for taking care of that. That is such a huge help. I have been up to here with stuff today. I haven't had a chance to eat, even thinking about it. I'm starved, but I'm not going to have time for lunch because I got another meeting that showed up as a surprise. But there's a donut there that's going to tie me over.
Share with people and get the word out and get some of their perspective. It's going to be a little bit hard and tricky. I was thinking about the weekend in March. Does that work for you?
March? Yeah, March will work.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then I was also thinking, Carl, look at me while I'm talking to you.
Where's my phone, Ben? You just cracked the screen on it.
Sorry. For the kids, we sure have it here. So let's talk about that when we get into staff meeting. We'll get there.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, did you guys leave the room? Sorry.
So, you two understand why I brought you here?
Yeah, but he didn't choose the song that I told him to use for the service.
Yeah. Well, I understand that must have hurt you pretty deeply, Ben. But what you did was not okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I was peeling an orange, and I made up for that by having that donut. So, but I have a little confession for you. You couldn't see it really in the video, but I brought in a box of Krispy Kremes, and that was the last one left. But I went with Krispy Kreme because it's just better than Spud Nuts. I've got a few people. See, I'm giving you the chance to practice forgiveness to me, all right? Yeah. So we're talking about coming home for Christmas. It's a beautiful season, the season of Advent. And last week, Pastor Sherry brought us an incredible message about the power of grace and having our homes be homes that are filled with grace, with gratitude, with rejoicing, and the impact that has in our hearts, in our lives, in the lives of the people that we share our home with. And this week, we're talking about forgiveness and the impact that forgiveness has as we share that in our homes, we share that with our families. What does that look like, especially for those of us who've had maybe difficulty in our homes, and it's a place where it's hard because there's pain. Not all of us have had the same experience in our homes. Now, When talking about home, I thought, what is more appropriate than to wear the shirt that my dad got for me that has the name of my hometown on it, Valparaiso. He sent it to me this last year, and maybe just to let me know, like, don't forget, this is where you came from. This is your hometown. And so I thought, I'm going to wear this shirt today as we talk about home and what home looks like. Now, for me, home, and this season specifically, there's a lot of things that come to my mind. The first thing that comes to my mind, though, is that old Advent calendar that you would like count down and open up, and you had the chocolates inside. As a kid, that was just like the most exciting thing to look forward to, besides actual Christmas Day, right? It was a little like whet my appetite, tide me over until Christmas Day. It was fantastic. I think about snickerdoodles and signing Christmas cards. Not so much the signing the Christmas cards, but the eating of the snickerdoodles, because that was always great. I think about the anticipation and the hope for enough snow by Christmas that I'd be able to go outside and build a snow fort or a snowman. And so far, in 2 out of 3 years, I've had enough to do that here. It's great. I think about just the anticipation and the joy of no school. Being on vacation from school and just being able to have that break. I also think about, Christmas lights and setting up decorations and decorating the tree and pulling out those old, Christmas ornaments from when I was in kindergarten and first grade. And for some reason, my mom and dad still appreciate that. And I look at that and I go, you must really love me. It's actually a tradition for my mom to give us Christmas ornaments, and she still sends them to me. I'm 35, and she still sends me a yearly Christmas ornament. Benny, you will always be my Superman. So home is a lot of different things. And when I think about home, I think about my family. I think about my friends, but I also think about my childhood pets. Now, when I say pet, I don't mean this. Now, if you know what this is and you're able to get it for your child or grandchild this year, you will be a hero to them, okay? What I do mean, though, is a dog, okay? Before having kids, my parents had a Great Dane named Max. And when they decided to start having a family, they realized that Max he was too big if they were going to have young children. And so they found a new home for him. Well, when I was in elementary school, the first dog, my parents finally said, you know what, maybe it's time for us to have a dog. The boys are getting a little bit older and whatnot, me being the youngest child. And so they got us a black lab. Well, he kind of found us, but we got a black lab, and we named him Toby. Of course, after the music artist Toby Mac. Now, if you've ever had a dog, you know that getting the dog crate trained is worth it, right? Especially as the puppy, when you go on trips, even at night, are they going to be in the house or whatever, and you put them in the crate and they get used to it. But those first few nights, man, that's rough, right? Toby would just howl, right, and cry. He didn't like being in there, and he would just, and for some of us, it's like, get the picture already, deal with it. Others of us, it's like, oh, my dog, he's in pain, he's hurting. That was difficult, but it was worth it, right? And we probably don't need to talk about just the value of getting them potty trained, right? House trained for even when you're in the house, because of what they can do and the destruction that can cause. Although as a kid, I did really appreciate the opportunity to go to my teacher and say, my dog literally ate my homework. And I brought the evidence in a little Tupperware container saying, it literally happened. The saliva is still there. Now, Toby, as a black lab, he kept getting bigger. And I loved that, because I loved to wrestle with him. I loved to get on the floor with him. I loved to play with him. It was so fantastic. But I was still young, and my parents felt like, again, the dog is getting kind of big for the kids. And so they decided to find him a new home. And that just hurt me, right? I was actually telling my mom about this, and she said to me, I can't for the life of me remember why we got rid of Toby. But of course for me, right, because of the pain, it seared into my memory. I know exactly why. You told me that he was too big, and you got rid of him. I was hurt. I was angry as a kid about that. The reality is we all hurt, okay? We all have pain, whether it's simple office blunders to the loss of a pet, to something a whole lot worse. We all have pain. And we all have a worst pain, usually because of something that someone did to us. Now, for some of us, that pain, it's immediate. It's an event that transpired, and it cuts deep. For others, though, it's slow. It's gradual, and it's been happening over time. And that pain just grows and simmers inside of us. So we all have pain. We all have different pain, but we're all connected in the fact that we have pain. And so we're all kind of connected together on this spectrum of pain. But as we all have pain, what we can't do is compare the pain that we have with the pain of others. It doesn't do us any good. Because, okay, this is the thing that's happened to me, and it's my pain, and maybe it's the worst thing that's happened to me, and so I'm here, and it hurts, and then I can look down, and I can see, well, you know what? Maybe for somebody else, they had something worse happen to them. And so, maybe I just need to get over it. And what I do is I diminish my pain. And my pain is my pain. But there are those of us, right, who are further down the spectrum, and maybe it's just we've had awful things happen to us, and we can look down and go, why are you complaining about that little thing? At least it wasn't this. And we end up diminishing their pain. The phrase "at least" is one of the worst phrases that we can offer somebody, especially in talking about pain, because it just creates separation and distance. So what do we do? As we all come with different pain, but connected by pain, what do we do when we've been hurt? We're going to look to interaction that Jesus has and a story that he tells to give us some perspective on what is our response when we hurt, when somebody has hurt us specifically. We're going to jump into Matthew chapter 18, starting in verse 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times?" And Jesus answered, "I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him. 'Be patient with me,' he begged, 'and I will pay back everything.' The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and began to choke him. 'Pay back what you owe me,' he demanded. And his fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, 'Be patient with me and I'll pay it back.' But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged, and they went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. 'You wicked servant,' he said. 'I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you?' In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart." Now, the Pharisees, they actually taught that the appropriate number of times to forgive someone was 3. And so Peter would have known this. He would have heard this. And so he comes to Jesus because he's kind of been working this out in his mind. And he's been around Jesus. He knows that Jesus is a little bit different. Jesus kind of pushes the envelope a little bit. And so he goes, "All right, Jesus, maybe it's not 3. Okay, well, I'm going to go with 7. It's the number of perfection. So Jesus, tell me, 7 times, is that the amount of times that I ought to forgive somebody who hurts me, who sins against me?" And Jesus' response, I love his response. Essentially, he's saying, stop keeping track. Stop keeping account of the offenses and your need to forgive. right? And then he tells this story about this king, this master, and the servant. And to contemporize it for us this morning, let me tell you this story. So I went to college for 7 years, and I have a bachelor's. Going to college for 7 years racks up some debt, okay? It is not fun. I am still paying that debt off. It's going to take me a while, okay? Now, I want you to picture for a minute that, okay, I've got this debt. Let's just say it's $40,000, okay? In the story, Jesus is giving a number that's actually, it's impossible to pay back, but for me, we'll just say $40,000, okay? Now, let's say, for example, I come to Miranda here, and I go, Miranda, I know, you could use that dollar, so here you go. Have this dollar, be blessed by it. When you can pay me back, go ahead. And then I got a phone call from the student loan company, Navient, and they're like, Ben, all right, there's no longer any grace period. We need it all back today, okay? Now, it would make sense for me to go, oh, I need to go and collect everything. Okay, I've given Miranda, give me the dollar back. Okay, I'd go and I got to make up this money and find a way to pay it back, right? But that's not what happens in Jesus' story. In the story, right, Navient calls and says, we need it all. I say, I don't have it. And they go, okay, it's gone. It's forgiven. We'll eat that cost and you be free. Now imagine I've had that conversation. I'm going, Miranda, give me my dollar. I need this back. Have I actually processed or understood the debt that was paid off for me? Somehow it hasn't landed with me. And I'm going, I still need recompense. I still need this back. You owe me. But maybe let's bring it home a little bit further. So, several years ago, I made a new friend. And me and this friend, we hit it off. We had so much in common. It was great. And we built this fast friendship, the fire that fans the flame of the friendship. It burned bright and large. And it was so great, sharing and talking and texting and just being able to go, I've got somebody who knows me, who gets me, who I trust. And then after a few months, I found out that they had lied to me. They had been using me. They betrayed me. And then they discarded me. And I went over a year without ever hearing from them. But a year and a half went by, and we ran into each other. And they were apologetic. And I told them, you're forgiven. I want you to be free. And then about 6 months after that, we didn't see each other. We didn't have any interaction. About 6 months later, we kind of rekindled the friendship, actually. We worked through the hurt. We worked through what had gone down between us, and we rekindled that friendship. And it felt so good to kind of get that back. And it was like nothing had ever gone wrong. It was as simple as just putting on a shirt. It just slid right into it. And it was great. And again, the trust and the joy, and we have got so much in common, and it was fantastic. And then again, after a little more than 3 months, I found out again that they had lied to me. They'd used me. They made me to be a fool. They betrayed me. And I can tell you, for me, that's been the worst pain of my life. I had an opportunity actually to see this friend in August. I had some things that I had to just say, just to get off my chest. So we went to dinner, and then we ended up walking along the beach at Alki in Seattle. And as we started to walk, this friend, they were profusely apologetic again. And I told my friend, look, you don't need to apologize. I've already forgiven you, and I want you to be released from the pain that you feel from what happened. But while I believe that forgiveness offered can be a one-time event, that the working out for me of that forgiveness is a longer process. Because the reality is, right, that over these years, that pain keeps wanting to resurface. It keeps wanting to come back up within me. And so I realized that, you know what, just to say I forgive you once, and that's true. I want them to be released. I want them to be free. But the pain wants to keep coming back. And it threatens that desire for good for them to be released. And so I've got to come back, and I don't just forgive them once, but I forgive them multiple times. And I forgive them over multiple days, weeks, months even, where each day I have to do a little bit of work to forgive. And so I wonder, actually, as Jesus is having this interaction with Peter, if he knows this process and he's speaking to this process, that maybe the number of times that we forgive someone is not equal to the number of offenses. And when we stop keeping count, we're actually freed up to forgive as many times as we need to. As I processed through this, and even my own story, here's the definition that I came up with for forgiveness: to let go my desire to hurt the one who hurt me. Now, the reality, if I'm going to forgive, if I'm going to let go of that desire to say, I want you to hurt, it doesn't mean that I'm letting go and that there shouldn't be consequences for actions, okay? There are still consequences. There are still results that come from our actions in this world. When the brother of Botham Jean forgave the woman who killed him, he didn't plead, don't send her to jail. He pled, I want you to know Jesus. There are still consequences to the things that happened. And there are still boundaries that we need to put into place. Sometimes that boundary is, you know what? You're not a part of my life anymore. But sometimes we can't do that with the people in our lives who've hurt us because we see them. They're in our family. They're our closest friends, and they've hurt us. And so what do? We establish boundaries. Because Jesus isn't saying, be a doormat. But establishing those boundaries can be hard. I named one last night, actually, to this friend. I can tell you my stomach is in knots over it. Because it's hard. And the reality is that we all have different situations. We all have different things, different people, different environments, right, that have caused us the pain. And there's no way that I'm going to be able to speak to all of those issues. But the reality is that we all have that pain. And that at times, all of us can not want to be freed up to forgive as many times as we need to. See, what happens in us, right, is that the holding back of the forgiveness, it becomes the only control that we get. It's a way to hurt them back. I want them to feel what I have felt, the pain that they have caused me. And so if I hold this back, they're not released, and they're in pain. And so we are actually demanding for justice in that moment, right? Because we've been wronged. We've felt this offense that has hurt us. And so we say, make this right. And so we get angry, and we rage, and we cry out, and what happens is the thing that we're holding on to and the thing that we're raging against becomes the bars of our own cage. Because this at least gives me something to hold on to. This gives me something that I can be mad against and push against and be angry at. You see, the thing that happened, the offense, it put me in the cage. It put me in the cage. But the reality is, I'm the one who gets myself out of it. Because what happened to you, to me, isn't nearly as important as what I do with what happened to me. I can't control what happened, but I can respond, and that response matters. And oftentimes what happens is what was done to me blocks out what was done for me. I want you to think about an eclipse. We've all probably seen one. The sun is the biggest thing we have in our solar system, right? It's massive. It's absolutely incredible. And yet a smaller object can actually block its view from me. I can hold up my thumb and I can block out the sun. Because this is closer to me than the sun, and it's able to be blocked out. And the reality that God wants for us is to say the sun needs to be first. It needs to be closer than that. My son needs to be closer because he's big enough so that when that offense happens, it's not that that offense is small, but it's not bigger than what I've done for you. And so it needs to be close. It needs to be real. It can't be a far away thing. You see, the reality is that through the cross, justice has been served. For all the things that I have done wrong that I need for forgiveness for, and everything that you've done wrong that you need for forgiveness for. Everything that's been done wrong in the world demands punishment, demands justice. And God said, I'm going to take all of that, and I'm going to pour out that punishment, mete out that justice onto my son on the cross. God has met my demand to be righted for justice. But I can tell you this, Christ did not die on the cross and set us free so that we would go back and cage ourselves again. And he did not forgive us that we might withhold forgiveness from someone else. And so the cross becomes the key that actually lets us out of the cage. And that's the invitation. That's the gospel for us today. That we might come before the cross and die. To let my pain die. To let my grievances die. To let my anger die there. That I might be set free. And the reality is that I need to come there every single day to receive that forgiveness, to bring my pain there. I can't just go, thank you, Jesus, for dying on the cross for me, and now live my life past it. I have to come back to the cross every single day to say, I need this forgiveness in my own life. And when we do that, we experience freedom. In my last church, I was in a small group. And it was made up of mostly couples, but all who didn't have kids, so I felt like I belonged a little bit. And I loved being in this small group. It was a fantastic group. We got to grow together. We got to deal with hard things together. I remember one day in particular where one of my friends in this group was still kind of working out what this whole faith thing is. There had been pain in his life before, and he was processing it all. And he told us this story. He served in the Navy, and while he was out deployed, while he was out on the ship, his wife was in a terrible car accident, a life-threatening car accident. And he got word of this, and of course, right, his response is, I need to go and be with her. And so he made a request to his supervisors, let me go be with my wife. And they denied his request. And the anger that he felt had just built up in him. And it was keeping him trapped. And as he began to talk it out, and as we began to just sit there with him in it, and as he began to process this whole idea of Christ and forgiveness, he began to be set free. And we're in tears in this room, and I still remember seeing physically in him that burden actually coming off of him and a physical change that took place within him as he embraced that forgiveness. how do we get there? How can we actually accomplish this kind of forgiving of these wrongs? I want to share with you from Luke chapter 17. I think Jesus gives us some insight into the way forward. Starting in verse 4. It says this, even if they sin against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times come back to you saying, I repent, you must forgive them. The apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith. And he replied, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it will obey you. So Jesus gives this scenario, right? And he doesn't offer an option. He actually gives a command. You must forgive. It's a hard truth. It's a hard teaching that Jesus is offering right there. The disciples, they know this is difficult. And so they go, we can't do that. That's too much. You're asking too much of us, Jesus. But we want to be able to do that. So you know what? Increase our faith. Give us more faith that we might be able to do that thing that you're asking us to do. You see, we think that we can do more if we have more. Give me more faith, I'll be able to do more things with it. But I love that Jesus doesn't answer directly, because he understands that it's not about the quantity, but the quality, the kind of faith. Because Jesus is an expert at taking small things and doing incredibly big things with them. Just ask the 5,000 people who were fed from one boy's lunch. And so Jesus wants us to know that the doing belongs to him. Let him do this work in you. And so our prayer can become this. Jesus, I recognize how much you have done for me. I know how great the debt was that you canceled, that I could never repay. Work out within me this forgiveness that I need to offer. And then our work becomes simply to just come to Jesus, to come to the cross and receive what he wants to give us. And in this season of Advent, the season where we bring in so many people in our lives, those who have hurt us, but that who we have relationship with, I want us to remember this, that there could be no cross without first a manger. So take your pain, take the hurt, take the anger, and bring it to the cross and let it die there. And then come to the manger, a reminder of God's goodness poured out into the world, and received the gift that he wants to give you. The ability to not only receive forgiveness, but be able to offer forgiveness to others. And when we can do that, we begin to see that this forgiveness, it's big enough to cover our debt, and it's big enough to still overflow out of us into the lives of those around us, into the lives of the people that we're going to invite into our homes. Receive the gift that you might be set free. I'm going to give you an opportunity this morning. We all have pain. And as I've been talking, there's probably some pain that has surfaced in your heart and your mind. And that pain is real. And God cares about our pain. And he wants you to process it He wants you to bring that pain to him. And there's something that happens when we actually physically get up and move, and so I'm going to give you an invitation to come forward. We have these 4 tables up here, and there are sheets of paper and some pens. And when you're ready, if you choose, you can also stay in your seat and just listen to God's Spirit in you. I'm going to invite you to come and grab a sheet of paper and write down that pain. It might be a word, it might be a phrase, it might be a paragraph that you need to just get out. And then fold up that piece of paper and come and place it here in the manger. As an act of, I'm giving this over to Jesus. And then receive from him the promise. Take with you this promise from God that he wants you to live free. He wants you to know that you are loved and forgiven. Patrick is going to come up and he's going to sing a song. I'm going to invite you. Listen to the Spirit. Respond in the way that he is calling you to. Come to Jesus.